Finance Secretary Tuhin Pandey, Secretary Economic Affairs Ajay Seth, Secretary Expenditure Manoj Govil, Secretary Department of Financial Services Nagarajuji, Secretary taking care of Public Enterprises and Deepam Arunish Chavlaji, the chairman of both the boards, Ravi Agarwalji and Sanjay Agarwalji, and all senior officers of both CBIC and CBDT, CMDs of the public sector banks, officers from the field formations, and also the media, industry, leaders of businesses who have been invited, to all of you all, the post-budget welcome. I think by now, every aspect of the latest budget for 25-26 has been read about, discussed, and also the implications of such a decision are all being discussed and mulled over. I understand there's also a question and answer session after my talk. So without getting into details of what the budget has provided for, which of course my colleague has very nicely, clearly explained in every aspect. But the broad picture is that the government's emphasis since post-COVID to put money for public expenditure in capital building, asset building continues. And that is why this time the capex shown in the budget compared to last year is at least 10.2% more, meaning 11.11 lakh crores was in the July budget, starting from the vote on account budget for the year 24-25. And now, if I add the public sector enterprises' own resources, not from our budget, putting their own resources into capital asset building, our over 11 lakh of 24-25 has itself gone to 11.21 lakh crores. And with about over 4.5 or 4.8 lakh crores by the public sector and enterprises from their own resources, from the public sector enterprises of Government of India and the Government of India budget put together, closer to 16 lakh crores is what is going for capital expenditure. And therefore, I would think the emphasis or any reason for people to think that the emphasis has shifted from capital expenditure towards consumption is not right. It is true that we've enhanced the capital expenditure budget and simultaneously given some concessions through reduction in tax, particularly personal income tax, for people who would want to spend or save or invest. So the tax concession which has been given in this budget, and I thank Honorable Prime Minister for being absolutely considerate about taxpayer and rewarding the taxpayer. And on that score, it was readily agreed by him that we should give relief up to 12 lakh rupees of annual income. And that is why today we are able to say that that probably is giving a picture that we are giving a shifted emphasis for consumption boosting rather than for capital asset building, which has been the feature all the while. No, capital asset building is also got that much and more provision, as much as respecting the taxpayers and giving them some kind of a relief so that whether they want to spend it, whether they want to save it, whether they want to invest it is up to them. So if that is the, let's say, the headline of newspapers since after the budget, The few things which I want to put before you, which have macroeconomic implication, which are really the steps taken towards leading India to become Vikasit, are the emphasis for R&D, which continues from the previous last two budgets. We are giving money for creating that kind of a fund from, or using that when monies are raised from the market. You are going to have more than 1 lakh crore for supporting R&D, even driven by private agencies. So government together with private research bodies would want to build that momentum on research, particularly in science and technology related matters, medicine, essentially in STEM. That doesn't, of course, deny anybody else who wants to come up with a credible proposal for R&D. Equally, we have kept the steps on reforms going, whether it is for manufacturing through the PLI, whether it is for removing the stress on businesses to do compliance. You know the numbers, more than 1,500 laws have been, archaic laws have been removed from the ledgers. Similarly, more than 40,000 compliance norms, rules, regulations have also been completely removed. And this is happening at the central level. I expect, seeing the advantage that such a thing gives in the minds of businesses, even state governments would come forward to remove such stressful compliance-related regulations which have been on the records for a long time. So the reforms for boosting manufacturing, reforms towards ease of doing business, reforms also to make sure that the social infrastructure is ready so that people do not have to run around to get their basics, are all being kept in place. With this, we didn't stop. The reform momentum shall continue. Newer areas are also being opened up. That is why, since the last 2 years, we are finding investment coming for space sector, investment coming from nuclear energy sector, and together with having announced the policy, we are not sitting back and watching. We are also going further to come up with a small modular reactor which will bring in the nuclear energy to different parts of the country and not be one colossus big unit somewhere, but elsewhere where the power requirements are going up. It takes time for the grids to come in place. So the small nuclear, small modular reactors will be able to give us that energy security which we so require, particularly with more and more data centers coming into India. They are going to be guzzlers of power, but they're also going to be givers of jobs. So we need to support them. We need to give them the required energy that they may need. Other than this, I was glad to see that one of the recipients of this MSME guaranteed loans, which is sovereign guaranteed loans, being given to also people who are in the area of critical minerals. In critical minerals, today, India is doing a lot of forward and backward supporting of the system. We are signing MOUs with very many countries, from where imports of critical minerals, which we don't have in this country, is made possible. Customs and duty regulations have been simplified for them. In fact, a list of, if I know correct, 24 critical minerals have been exempted from duty so that they can be imported, so that our MSMEs which require them for their businesses can get them at affordable prices. So if that is one thing about the energy, critical minerals for our necessary Atmanirbhar Bharat program, for which the MSMEs are contributing, you're also looking at further reforms in terms of making, opening up sectors, bringing in greater FDI for insurance. India's insurance sector needs to deepen, broaden. We need more players in the field, but at the same time, guardrails have been put even for such a thing, so that India's own citizens' money towards premium payment for insurance is kept within the country and are not taken out. Investments are also going to be here. The profits which they generate will have to also be used here. So guardrails are being made so that our interests are not affected. If these are the kind of steps with which we want to move, education and health is getting priority. More and more universities are being covered. For the students, loans which are being given, institution of excellence is being established for the sake of artificial intelligence. So young people who will need training, skills are also being covered in this budget and similarly in the earlier budgets. Although there's quite an open field for us to look at, in order that more people are able to see business prospects and to ensure India's own food security, the budget announcement on the rural areas, where a scheme, a unique scheme, but a vast scheme is being brought in, is for the rural areas, particularly for 100 districts, which are known for low-level productivity in agriculture. Agricultural productivity where it is not even normal, but very much below normal. We've picked up on these districts and announced a scheme called PM Dhan Dhanya Yojana, where in that area, in those districts where agriculture productivity is not up to normal level, leave alone the question of them doing very well, we've picked up on those 100 districts and ensure that we will have a comprehensive package of improving productivity through high-yielding seeds, ensuring that additional inputs for farmers is given. If fundamental irrigation facilities have not reached there, we will focus on them to get the irrigation. Give farmers training on storage, at the same time create warehouses in those districts. Make sure the youth in that area are getting opportunities there itself with agriculture value-added services. And in that, we are also hoping that we'll bring the expertise of best practices all around the world for such activities through linkages with multilateral development finance institutions. So the example that I've given is one, of course, that's one of the biggest schemes in this budget. But to give you an idea of everything that is done in each of the announcements is to comprehensively look at that announcement, its forward and backward linkages which will be required, and how that will have a bearing on people who live in that area. All these are completely worked out much before the announcement is made. So from 1st April, actually in the ground on those districts, activities will start at the earliest. So we are super conscious on how time has to be optimally utilized so that every announcement in the budget finds the ground and hits the ground, as they say in baseball language, and starts running. So that's what this budget's feature is all about. I don't want to get into greater details. One other thing which goes alongside the budget are the various tax concessions, particularly the CBIC has come up with rationalizing customs duty and also simplifying the whole process, just as the CBDT has come up with TDS simplification. All that is there. But we have completely shaken up the IT, Income Tax Act, and the 1961-62 Income Tax Act shall now be replaced by a new act, which is in the form of a bill introduced in the Parliament. There is a select committee which is appointed, 31 members of Lok Sabha will be sitting and looking at it in all details. As it is, we had more than, I think, 60,000 inputs coming online towards the making of this bill. Active engagement, as PM would say, Jan Bhagidari, involve people in everything that you do. That Income Tax Act review has had a very big component of Jan Bhagidari. We've taken inputs from people. And now the select committee will of course go through it and invite various stakeholders to come and give their comments on it. The IT Act essentially is looking at simplification. When it was born in 61-62, it had only about 200 odd sections. As time went by, it touched over 800 sections. And it is that over 800 that we are bringing down now to slightly over 500, I think, sections. And very meaningful, user-friendly ways of regrouping sections and clauses which affect a particular section will all be found in one particular place rather than be spread around the act. So simplification and the language simplification is where I put a lot of interest in, so that a person reading it should be able to interpret it for himself, herself, and it should not yield itself to too many interpretations that everybody goes to the court interprets it in its wisdom, the way it would interpret, and at the end of the day you're spending time on explaining the law that you created for yourself. So I must, much before the bill is cleared, I do not want to appreciate our own people, but I will certainly put on record the tremendous work the CBDT and all its officers have done in getting this act after these many number of years. To have to work since after the July budget saying we will simplify the Income Tax Act and come within 6 months with a new one has involved every officer in the CBDT to work night and day, and that is the product which has now gone to the select committee. Similarly, the CBIC has done immense lot of work in making sure the basic customs duty and a reason with which you would want to bring in or expand it have all been done with meticulousness, and I appreciate the CBIC and its team for having done extensive work. And it is not just because I'm here in Mumbai to talk about these things. Both the CBDT and CBIC in particular have had very, very difficult days with us, with me in particular and with the secretaries, asking them questions after questions as to why it can't be further simplified. And they rose to the occasion every time. So I appreciate the CBIC for having gone through the rigor and also the pain of having to get it all done well before this budget could come up. So their contribution in the finance bill can also be seen. So I appreciate the entire Department of Revenue, the secretaries, all of whom sit during the meetings in the morning when we decide how the ministry has to go forward. It is a strategy, or you call it is the way in which finance ministry functions. We've been doing that last 5 years, and it has given us rich dividends in the sense of greater coherence in what we do. And I know they've also been put through to one exercise which they were not familiar with, but now I'm sure all of them realize that it gives them benefit. Bring out FAQs on everything that you do, much before people read it in the papers. Put out the FAQs. And I can see in this budget, much before people started discussing, saying, yes, we understand this is the case, but we don't know the details were out. Everything was put out. And that is something which the boards or the DOR or the officials were not quite used to. But we said, you'll have to do it this time. And I'm sure they are breathing a sense, heaving a sigh of relief, saying, thank God we are not being put to a lot of cross-questioning. There will still be questions. We will still answer them. But at least the initial round should go with a lot of matter-of-fact information shared with the public. And that's what they did. And I think for that, I owe them a big thank you. It has helped all of us. So without taking much of your time, because I'm in Mumbai, watchers of the Indian economy are here. Is it only tax concessions? Is it just income foregone? Is it also some reform in the IT? No. A big difference which has been brought about in the budget making, and a big difference to the responsible way in which we should handle taxpayers' money are reflected, I would think, in two things. With that, I'll end my speech. The first thing is our borrowings are essentially going only for building assets. And that is why when you see the capital expenditure to the GDP number and match it with the fiscal deficit, they are absolutely, completely close to each other, probably 1 decimal point different, proving the fact that if we borrow to build assets. And that I'm sure people in Mumbai, watchers of the Indian economy, will like to know about. So I thought I'll say that first. Second, since the July budget, the announcement that we made that we'll follow the fiscal deficit path, a glide path we announced, we have followed it this year, and we shall follow it till the next year where we have said below 4.5 is where we will reach. We shall reach it. I've said that we will reach it. Equally, from now, we are also going to be focusing on the debt to GDP, because as you would all recall, several years ago, you had a report coming which said India's GDP, debt to GDP, will have to be brought down. And that is one of the important things with which India's finances will have to be handled, learning from all the experiences of Prime Minister Modi as Chief Minister in a state, and later known for his fiscal prudence. He's been guiding us. The debt to GDP by 2031 will come down to 50% plus minus 1. This is a commitment we've given in the budget. Every measure will be taken to bring down debt, and that is something which we owe it to the country. We need to have a country responsibly run, at the same time not affect any of our education, nutrition, health, hospital services, and of course asset building in terms of connectivity, internet connectivity, road connectivity, and every other port, enhancing our capacities and so on. All this will be done. So coming first, immediately after the budget, to Mumbai is now a very holy and sacred duty. The entire ministry is here. We are here now before you to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, with your permission, we will start the interactive session. I now request Ms. Vatsala Jha, Principal Commissioner of Income Tax, to moderate the interactive session.
Thank you, Suruchi. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected Madam, Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, Minister of State for Finance, Shri Pankaj Chaudhary, Finance Secretary.
Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day.